Hi everybody, it's Ashley. Welcome back to my channel, and today I'm coming to you with my February wrap-up. I know that it's a couple of days late and I apologize for that. There's just been so much going on. You'll have to excuse the state of my bookshelf behind me. It's brand new. I'm still in the process of getting everything onto it, and it's just craziness. I'm filming 3 videos today to try to get ahead a little bit, and so next week it should be nice and pretty for you guys. This month I read 5 books, and it was a bit of a mediocre reading month. None of these books were necessarily bad. It just wasn't what I was expecting and like what my average wrap-up typically is. And I'll get more into that a little bit as we go. Now, the first book that I read this month was The New Girl by R.L. Stine. It's one of my New Year's reading resolutions to read childhood favorites, and growing up, I absolutely loved the Fear Street books by R.L. Stine. It's one of the reasons that I started getting into thrillers and horror, because these books just captivated me in such an amazing, amazing way. And reading it now as an adult, my viewpoint is definitely different. I still enjoyed this. I still think it was a fun read, and I do plan on reading the rest of the series for the nostalgia's sake, but it's in no way great literature, and I can acknowledge that. I think it's great for getting kids into reading, and it's very age appropriate because it captivated me. I think I started reading these when I was maybe 10 or 11 years old. But this is the first book in the Fear Street series, and this is a story about a boy who gets captivated by the new girl at school. She's mysterious and nobody really knows anything about her, and he finds out that she has moved into a house on Fear Street, which is known for having all kinds of weird and mysterious things happen there. And he keeps trying to get a hold of her and is told that she is dead. But she's at school every day. So he is trying to figure out if she's really dead, why her family would say that she's dead if she's not, and all of that, everything that goes along with that. It was a fun read. Don't get me wrong, but looking back on it as an adult, I can see how extremely problematic it was. This boy was so obsessed with this girl. It really was bordering on stalkerish. I was uncomfortable the entire time that I was reading it. I mean, it was a good story, but I'm like, dude, she talked to you one time, like, why are you going to her house in the middle of the night and, like, harassing her family? Like, it's definitely problematic, but it was fun, and I am going to continue reading the rest of them. I think I have them all somewhere, but I'm unboxing all of my books now for my new shelf, so we shall see. This was a 3-star, and that's mainly for the nostalgia. I might not rate the rest of them just because I know they're not going to be high stars, but I did still enjoy. The next book that I read this month was The Dark Half by Stephen King. To be honest, I started this book back in November, I think it was, and then I very, very suddenly got approved for a place to live, so things started going crazy with the move. It ended up in a box, and then I couldn't find the box, and it was just insane. So I just recently found it and finished it. So this was maybe half read in November and half read in February. But I did enjoy this one. I don't know if I would say it's one of Stephen King's better books. This follows the story of a writer, and his name is Tad Beaumont, and he has been working under a pseudonym named George Stark for many years, and the books under his pen name have been considerably more successful, and he is tired of hiding behind that name and wants to kill off George Stark, and it's done in a very public manner. And then people in like the publishing world start dying, and it is tied back that his pseudonym, George Stark, has come back to life, and he is pissed that he got killed off, and basically is trying to force Tad to continue writing because that's what keeps him alive. It was an interesting concept. I really, really enjoyed the beginning of it. It started dragging in the middle for me quite a bit. I'm wondering, though, if that's because I had such a long break in between. So I don't really fault the book or Stephen King for that, because I was into it starting off. And I think that my viewing experience would be different on a reread, so I might actually reread this again relatively soon. But I did enjoy this. I believe I gave it a 4-star rating on Goodreads. But I did like it. I just hated that it started losing its momentum around the middle, and I was pretty confused by the ending, to be 100% honest. The next book that I read this month is due to another reading resolution for the new year for me, and that is to read more classics, and that is Little Men by Louisa May Alcott. I don't know if you can actually see that cover. But this is the sequel to Little Women, which I read last month, and I love Little Women. I read Little Women many times as a child, and I really, really enjoyed it. And this is the sequel to that. I had a box set of a trilogy for the Little Women series, and to be honest, I don't remember reading this or the book afterwards, which is called Jo's Boys. And I may have read it, but I may have just been too young to retain it. But this follows the main heroine from Little Women, Jo, as she is now the headmistress of this all-boys boarding school that she opened at the end of Little Women, excuse me. And this is following a few years in the future. She's got her own children, and it's her running this school, and it follows the lives and adventures of the boys. And there's a couple of girls there, but they're relatives. So this book was fun. It wasn't bad by any stretch of the imagination, but it did not grab me in the same way that Little Women did, and I was disappointed. It just did not captivate me on the same level. I don't know what it was. I didn't feel like Jo was featured enough, and when she was, it was disconnected. She didn't feel like the same character to me. Now, like when Laurie would make his appearances, he was totally Laurie. He was the same way. But I did not get that from Jo. And I don't know if that's because she was such a tomboy in Little Women, and in this she's taken on a very maternal role, and she's more like Marmee. She felt out of character. I felt like there were too many characters to keep up with. I got a lot of the boys mixed up throughout the story, and this took me longer to read than it should have, considering it's not very long. So I am going to read Jo's Boys next month, but I don't have high hopes for it based on this. It's a little bit of a disappointment. I gave it a 3-star. Maybe that's why I don't remember reading it as a kid. It just didn't stick with me. But 3 stars. If you didn't know this existed, I still think it's worth the read. seeing, what happened to some of our characters from Little Women, if you love that book, just to see what happened to the characters when they got older, but I just didn't find this as enchanting of a story. The next book that I read this month was my biggest disappointment, and that is Heir of Fire by Sarah J. Maas. I think I started this in January, to be honest. At least it felt like I was reading it for more than a month. This is the third book in the Throne of Glass series, and I am mostly disappointed in this because I loved the first two books in the series. They really grabbed me and pulled me in. And then I get to this monster, and it felt like this story was going absolutely nowhere. I have heard people on BookTube say that this book is the low point of the series, and I'm seriously hoping that that is true. Because I went from loving Throne of Glass and Crown of Midnight to coming to this, and I'm just thinking, what the hell's going on? It's so long, and it honestly feels like filler for the majority of the time. Most of the story just felt pointless. Like, the last 100 pages felt like that was the most important part of the story, and that could have been done without all this extra padding in here. I just thought it got a little out of control, and I am going to continue with the next one. I think it's Empire of Storms, because I've already purchased it. I purchased it before I started this. I bought the two of them together, and I am going to read that, but I may take a little bit of a break from this series just so that I don't burn out, because that one's very long too, and see if it improves. I hope it does, but if I don't enjoy that one better, I probably won't continue with the series, and that makes me sad because I did love the first two books. This was a 3-star. I probably should have rated it lower, but I gave it a 3 mainly out of respect for the first two books, to be honest. Yeah, disappointment. Sorry. And finally, I come to my last book of the month, which is my favorite book of the month. I really, really loved this one. And this is The Family Upstairs by Lisa Jewell. This was so captivating and inventive and gripping, and I just loved it. I've never read Lisa Jewell before, but I've recently been seeing her recommended a lot on BookTube, and it seemed like it was out of nowhere. And I thought that she only had one book, because the one that I was hearing about all the time was Watching You. And then I found this one, and I bought this and Watching You at the same time, and the cashier, when I checked out, was raving about this. Like, she didn't say anything about the other one, but this one, she was just going on and on about how amazing it was, and I was going to love it, and that it has serious Flowers in the Attic vibes, and, she could not stop raving about it. And so I took a chance. I was like, I think I'll read this one first. And I'm so glad that I did, because this was incredible. I can see where she got Flowers in the Attic vibes. It did feel like it was inspired by that story to me, but it is in no way a copy. I'm not saying that. I just felt like the author probably got inspiration from it. But this is told in present day and in the past, and it goes back and forth, and it's from a couple of different characters' points of view, which I thought was interesting. In the present day, we have this girl, I forgot her name, Libby. I apologize. Libby is notified on her 25th birthday that she has inherited this manor house that has been deserted since she was an infant. And she's adopted, and she knew she was adopted, but she's always wondered about her birth family. So when she goes to claim her inheritance, she learns about things that she didn't know, that when she was 10 months old, that there was a triple suicide in the house, and there was a note left with her name, and there was a rabbit's foot in her crib with her, like she was freshly changed, and neighbors started talking about people coming and going from the house all the time, and that there were apparently a lot of children that lived there, but when the police found the bodies, the only one that was left was the baby, and nobody ever found out what happened to the other kids. And we get a look at that going back into the past, because we're looking at it from a couple of different viewpoints. And the parents who owned the house, they originally had 2 children, and then they started letting people move in. It kind of became like a cult, and their children came in too. And these people lived in the attic and eventually started to lock all of the children away and take over the house. And it was a cult, like a commune, in a way that these people like were very, very strict and very controlling and abusive, and it drove these people to insanity. I'm not going to say much more about it. I will do a review for this soon, because it really does deserve its own review. But this was a 5-star read. I absolutely loved it. If you enjoyed Flowers in the Attic, you will probably like this. It's got a similar feel to it, but it's not exactly the same at all. I really do think that you will enjoy this if you pick it up. I can't wait to read her other books now. Alright, that is all that I have for you guys today. If you like this video, please make sure to leave a comment down below, like and subscribe, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.